Maya was an 8-year-old girl who lived in a small, crowded area. Her family didn't have much money, and sometimes they struggled to pay for food and clothes. But Maya had something special. She loved science. Maya was always curious about how things worked. She would take old bottles, broken toys, and scraps of metal she found lying around and try to turn them into something new. She called them her experiments. Her tiny hands would twist, glue, and build for hours. She didn't have fancy tools, but that didn't stop her. Maya dreamed big. She wanted to be an inventor someday, someone who could create things to help people. She imagined building machines that could clean water or make life easier for her mom. Her mom, Mrs. Johnson, worked very hard. She cleaned houses every day, coming home late and tired. But no matter how tired she was, she always made time to listen to Maya talk about her ideas. One night, Maya showed her mom a little windmill she had made from straws and bottle caps. It didn't work perfectly, but it spun a little in the breeze. "Look, Mama," Maya said, her eyes shining. "One day, I'll make a big one that can give us electricity." Her mom smiled, even though she was tired. She stroked Maya's hair and said, "Baby, you are smart. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Keep dreaming. One day, you'll do great things." Maya didn't have everything she needed, but she had her mom's love and her own big dreams. And for her, that was enough to keep going. Maya loved science class. It was her favorite part of the day. She would sit right in the front row, her notebook open, ready to soak up every word her teacher, Mrs. Carter, said. Maya dreamed of impressing her teacher with all the little experiments she did at home. That day, Mrs. Carter stood at the blackboard, talking about energy. Maya listened carefully, her heart racing with excitement. She knew the answer to the question Mrs. Carter had just asked. "What is one way we can use solar energy?" Mrs. Carter said, looking around the room. Maya shot her hand up so fast, her pencil fell off her desk. "Me, Mrs. Carter? I know," she said, her face lighting up. Mrs. Carter raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms. "All right, Maya. Let's hear it," she said, her voice flat. Maya stood up. Her small hands gripped the desk nervously. "We can use solar energy to make fans or lights work," she said, her voice trembling but full of hope. For a moment, the room was silent. Maya smiled, waiting for her teacher to say something nice. But Mrs. Carter didn't smile. "Well," Mrs. Carter said, tilting her head, "that's an answer. I guess someone like you would know about fans, huh? Probably the only thing you can afford in your little shack." The room went still. Some kids laughed nervously. Others just stared at their desks, pretending they didn't hear. Maya's smile disappeared. Her chest felt tight, like she couldn't breathe. She wanted to say something back, but no words came out. She sat down quickly, her face burning. Mrs. Carter turned back to the board like nothing had happened. But for Maya, everything had changed. When the bell rang, Maya grabbed her things and walked out as fast as she could. She didn't want anyone to see the tears in her eyes. Outside, she sat under the old tree near the playground, hugging her backpack close. She felt small, like the whole world was laughing at her. Why did she say that? Maya whispered to herself. What did I do wrong? Maya thought about her mother, about how proud she looked whenever Maya shared her dreams. But now, those dreams felt far away, like stars she could never reach. She wiped her tears and stood up, brushing dirt off her skirt. Deep down, she knew this wasn't the end. Mrs. Carter's words hurt, but they couldn't erase Maya's love for science or her big dreams. As she walked home, Maya whispered to herself, "I'll prove her wrong. One day, she'll see what I can do." Her steps felt heavy, but there was a spark inside her, a tiny flame that refused to go out. Maya loved science class. It was her favorite part of the day. She would sit right in the front row, her notebook open, ready to soak up every word her teacher, Mrs. Carter, said. Maya dreamed of impressing her teacher with all the little experiments she did at home. That day, Mrs. Carter stood at the blackboard, talking about energy. Maya listened carefully, her heart racing with excitement. She knew the answer to the question Mrs. Carter had just asked. What is one way we can use solar energy? Mrs. Carter said, looking around the room. Maya shot her hand up so fast, her pencil fell off her desk. "Me, Mrs. Carter? I know," she said, her face lighting up. "Mrs. Carter raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms. All right, Maya. Let's hear it, she said, her voice flat. Maya stood up. Her small hands gripped the desk nervously. We can use solar energy to make fans or lights work, she said, her voice trembling but full of hope. For a moment, the room was silent. Maya smiled, waiting for her teacher to say something nice. But Mrs. Carter didn't smile. Well, Mrs. Carter said, tilting her head, that's an answer. I guess someone like you would know about fans, huh? Probably the only thing you can afford in your little shack. The room went still. Some kids laughed nervously. Others just stared at their desks, pretending they didn't hear. Maya's smile disappeared. Her chest felt tight, like she couldn't breathe. She wanted to say something back, but no words came out. She sat down quickly, her face burning. Mrs. Carter turned back to the board like nothing had happened. But for Maya, everything had changed. When the bell rang, Maya grabbed her things and walked out as fast as she could. She didn't want anyone to see the tears in her eyes. Outside, she sat under the old tree near the playground, hugging her backpack close. She felt small, like the whole world was laughing at her. Why did she say that? Maya whispered to herself. What did I do wrong? Maya thought about her mother, about how proud she looked whenever Maya shared her dreams. But now, those dreams felt far away, like stars she could never reach. She wiped her tears and stood up, brushing dirt off her skirt. Deep down, she knew this wasn't the end. Mrs. Carter's words hurt, but they couldn't erase Maya's love for science or her big dreams. As she walked home, Maya whispered to herself, I'll prove her wrong. One day, she'll see what I can do. Her steps felt heavy, but there was a spark inside her, a tiny flame that refused to go out. Maya walked home slowly that day, her head down. The words from Mrs. Carter still played in her mind. They felt like heavy stones in her heart. She didn't even notice the warm sun on her face or the kids laughing and playing in the street. When she got home, she found her mother, Isabel, folding clothes in the tiny living room. Maya dropped her bag by the door and stood there quietly, not sure how to start. Her mother looked up and saw the sadness in Maya's eyes. What's wrong, dear? Isabel asked gently, setting the clothes aside. Maya's lips trembled, and the tears she had been holding back all day finally came out. Mama, she said, her voice shaking. Mrs. Carter made fun of me. She said bad things about where we live. Isabel's face softened, and she opened her arms. Maya ran to her and hugged her tightly, burying her face in her mother's shoulder. She made me feel so small, Maya whispered. Isabel held her daughter close and stroked her hair. Oh, Maya, she said softly. People can say many things, but listen to me. What they say about you doesn't define who you are. You hear me? Maya looked up at her mother. But it hurt, Mama. It made me feel like maybe I'm not good enough. Isabel cupped Maya's face in her hands and looked her in the eyes. Maya, you are more than enough. You are smart. You are kind. And you are strong. Don't let anyone take that from you. Maya nodded slowly, her mother's words sinking in like water to dry soil. Later that evening, while Maya was helping her mother wash dishes, Isabel said, Did you hear about the science competition in town? Maya shook her head. What competition? They're having it at the community center next month, Isabel said with a smile. Anyone can join. I thought it might be perfect for you. Maya's eyes widened. A science competition? Really? Yes, really, Isabel said, drying a plate. You could show everyone what you can do, and maybe even win something. Maya's heart started to race. The idea excited her, but a small voice inside her whispered, What if you're not good enough? What if you fail? But Mama, Maya said hesitantly, what if my project isn't good? What if nobody likes it? Isabel gave her a knowing look. Maya, it's not about what other people think. It's about trying your best. You love science, right? Maya nodded. Then follow that love, Isabel said. The rest will take care of itself. That night, Maya sat at her little table, a blank sheet of paper in front of her. She tapped her pencil against her chin, thinking hard. What can I make? She muttered to herself. Then an idea popped into her head. What if I create something that helps people here? She thought. She remembered the broken streetlights in her neighborhood and the hot summer days when fans barely worked. Her pencil started to move across the paper. She didn't know exactly what her assignment would be yet, but she was determined to try. Maya stayed up late, sketching and scribbling notes. The doubt was still there, but now it was quieter. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. What people say about you doesn't define who you are. By the time Maya went to bed, she had a messy sheet of paper full of ideas and a tiny spark of hope in her heart. She didn't know what the competition would bring, but she knew one thing for sure. She was going to give it everything she had. The next morning, Maya woke up early. The sun was just rising, and the sky was painted in soft shades of pink and orange. She felt nervous but also excited. She had decided on her project, a water filtration system. Her neighborhood often had problems with clean water. Sometimes the water from the tap looked dirty, and it smelled funny too. Maya thought, what if I could fix that? What if I could help my neighbors have clean water? She didn't have fancy tools or expensive materials, but she wasn't going to let that stop her. Maya pulled out her little box of scraps and started sorting through them. There were old plastic bottles, pieces of cloth, and even a broken funnel she'd found in the trash. I can use this, she whispered to herself, holding up a plastic bottle. She remembered something she had read in one of her library books. You could clean water using layers, sand, charcoal, and stones. Maya didn't have money to buy anything, so she decided to find what she needed around her neighborhood. After breakfast, Maya grabbed her backpack and told her mother, I'm going out to look for supplies. Be careful, Isabel said, smiling. And don't forget, I'm proud of you. Maya spent the day searching. She found some sand near an old construction site. She picked up small stones from the side of the road. For charcoal, she asked the man who sold roasted corn on the corner. Why do you need charcoal, little one? The man asked, curious. Maya grinned. It's for a science project. I'm building a water filter. The man laughed kindly and gave her some for free. Good luck, young scientist, he said. Back at home, Maya spread out her materials on the floor. She cut the plastic bottle in half and started layering the inside. Stones at the top, sand in the middle, and charcoal at the bottom. She worked carefully, her hands moving fast but steady. But things didn't go smoothly. The first time she poured water into the filter, it leaked everywhere. Maya sighed in frustration, wiping her forehead. Why isn't this working? She muttered. At school the next day, Maya stayed quiet about her project. But some kids noticed her carrying a plastic bottle in her bag. What's that, Maya? A boy asked, smirking. It's for my science project, Maya said, holding it tightly. The boy laughed. Looks like garbage to me. Other kids joined in, giggling and pointing. Maya's cheeks turned red, but she didn't say anything. She just walked away, holding her head high, even though she felt small inside. When Mrs. Carter heard about her project, she wasn't any kinder. A water filter? Mrs. Carter said, raising her eyebrows. And you're making it out of trash? How very creative. Her voice dripped with sarcasm, and some kids in the class laughed again. Maya felt tears sting her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she whispered to herself, what people say about you doesn't define who you are. That evening, she went home and kept working. She made adjustments to the bottle, testing it over and over again. Each time it failed, she tried to figure out why. She added more sand. She fixed the way the layers were stacked. Slowly, it started to work. When she poured dirty water into the top, it came out cleaner at the bottom. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was a start. As Maya sat on the floor, staring at her little invention, she felt a tiny flicker of pride. I'll make it better, she said to herself. I'll keep trying. Even though people laughed, even though Mrs. Carter didn't believe in her, Maya believed in herself. And that was enough to keep her going. The day of the school science competition finally arrived. Maya woke up early, her stomach full of butterflies. She packed her project carefully in a cardboard box, making sure nothing would spill or break. Her mother stood by the door, smiling proudly. You've worked so hard, Isabel said. No matter what happens today, remember, I'm so proud of you. Maya nodded, hugging her tightly. Thank you, Mama. At school, the auditorium was buzzing with excitement. Students had set up their projects on long tables. Some had shiny, expensive-looking displays with lights and posters. Maya's little project sat quietly on the corner of her table, a simple plastic bottle with layers of sand, charcoal, and stones. She took a deep breath and straightened her back. It's not about how it looks, she told herself. It's about what it can do. Mrs. Carter walked by and glanced at Maya's project. She shook her head and smirked. Well, good luck, Maya, she said in a sarcastic tone. You'll need it. Maya's heart sank a little, but she didn't let it show. Instead, she focused on her project, adjusting the bottle and making sure everything was ready. When the judges arrived, they walked slowly around the room, stopping at each project to ask questions. Maya watched them from the corner of her eye, feeling more nervous with each step they took toward her. Finally, it was her turn. One of the judges, a kind-looking man with glasses, smiled at her. Hello, young lady. Can you tell us about your project? Maya took a deep breath. This is a water filter, she began, her voice a little shaky. It's made from things you can find at home, like a plastic bottle, sand, and charcoal. It can help clean dirty water, so people can drink it safely. She poured a cup of muddy water into the top of the filter. The judges leaned in, watching closely. A few seconds later, clear water dripped out from the bottom into a small cup. The judges exchanged surprised looks. The kind man smiled even wider. That's very clever, Maya. How did you come up with this idea? Maya felt her confidence grow. In my area, we sometimes have dirty water. I wanted to make something that could help people, even if they don't have much money. The judges nodded, clearly impressed. They asked her a few more questions, and Maya answered them all. By the time they moved to the next project, she felt a little lighter, like the weight in her chest had lifted. The competition went on for what felt like hours. Finally, it was time to announce the winners. Maya stood at the back of the room, clutching her hands tightly. The first place winner is, the announcer said, pausing for what felt like forever. Maya Alvarez, for her water filtration system. Maya's eyes widened. For a moment, she couldn't believe what she had heard. The room erupted in applause. Me, she whispered. Yes, you, someone shouted, and her classmates turned to look at her, their faces full of surprise. Even Mrs. Carter's jaw dropped. Maya walked to the front of the room, her legs shaking. The judges handed her a shiny gold ribbon and a certificate. You've earned a spot in the regional competition, the kind judge said. We can't wait to see what you'll do next. As Maya stood there, holding her prize, she felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had done it. Despite everything, the doubts, the teasing, Mrs. Carter's cruel words, she had proved herself. When she got home that evening, Maya showed the ribbon to her mother, who hugged her tightly. I told you, my girl, Isabel said with tears in her eyes. You're smart and you're strong. This is just the beginning. Maya smiled, feeling the spark inside her grow even brighter. She didn't know what the regional competition would bring, but for now, she was ready to dream even bigger. A few days after the competition, something surprising happened. Maya's name and picture appeared in the local newspaper. The headline read, Young girl creates water filter to help her community. When Maya saw the article, her eyes grew wide. Mama, look, she said, running to the kitchen. She held up the paper, her hands shaking with excitement. Isabel took the paper and smiled. You're famous now, she said with a laugh. Everyone is going to hear about how smart and kind you are. And Isabel was right. Word spread quickly. Neighbors started stopping Maya on the street to congratulate her. We're so proud of you, Maya, said Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived 2 doors down. You're going to make big changes, said Mr. Lopez, the man who had given her charcoal for her project. Even the kids who used to laugh at Maya now looked at her differently. Some of them even tried to talk to her. Your project was really cool, one boy admitted shyly. Maya thanked them all, but deep down, she knew she couldn't let it distract her. The regional competition was coming up, and she wanted to do her best. But not everyone was happy about Maya's success. Mrs. Carter, her science teacher, seemed more annoyed with Maya than ever. During class, she barely looked at her. And when Maya asked a question, Mrs. Carter would give short, cold answers. One afternoon, Mrs. Carter pulled Maya aside after class. Maya, she said, crossing her arms, I hope you know that the regional competition is much harder than our little school contest. The other students will have real projects, not something made out of garbage. Maya felt her chest tighten. But my project works, she said softly. Mrs. Carter smirked. For now. But don't get your hopes up too high, Maya. You'll just end up disappointed. Maya walked out of the classroom with her head down. Her teacher's words hurt, but she refused to let them break her. When she got home, she told her mother what had happened. Isabel frowned and placed a comforting hand on Maya's shoulder. "Maya, listen to me," Isabel said firmly. "There will always be people who try to bring you down, but you can't let them. You've come this far because you worked hard and believed in yourself. Don't stop now." Maya nodded, wiping away a tear. "I won't, Mama," she said. Over the next few weeks, Maya kept working on her project. She tested it again and again, making small changes to improve it. She even added a little spout to make pouring water easier. As she worked, more people came to visit her home. Some wanted to see her project, while others just wanted to cheer her on. One day, a local journalist came by with a camera. "Can we take your picture, Maya?" the journalist asked. "We'd like to feature you in the newspaper again." Maya stood proudly with her water filter and smiled for the camera. She hoped that her story would inspire other kids to follow their dreams, no matter where they came from. By the time the regional competition was only a week away, Maya felt more determined than ever. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that she had something special. As she lay in bed one night, staring at the stars outside her window, Maya whispered to herself, "I can do this. I just have to believe." The day of the regional competition was exciting and scary for Maya. The community center was packed with students, judges, and families. There were rows of projects, big, shiny, and fancy ones. Maya's project, still simple and made with scraps, sat quietly on her table. She took a deep breath. "I've worked hard," she told herself. "That's what matters." When the judges came to her table, Maya explained her water filter again, just like she had done at school. She showed them how it worked, pouring muddy water into the top and letting clean water drip out of the bottom. The judges were impressed. One of them smiled and said, "This is not only smart but also very useful. You should be proud." When it was time to announce the winners, Maya stood in the crowd, holding her breath. "And the first place winner is Maya Alvarez," the announcer said. The room burst into applause. Maya's eyes filled with tears as she walked to the front. She held her certificate tightly, her hands shaking with happiness. "You've also qualified for the national competition," one of the judges told her. "We believe in you, Maya." Maya couldn't wait to tell her mother. When she got home, Isabel hugged her so tightly that Maya could barely breathe. Isabel said, her voice full of pride, "You're going to the nationals." The weeks before the national competition flew by. Maya worked harder than ever. She made her project better, adding new ideas and making it look neat. She also practiced speaking, so she could tell her story in a way that everyone would understand. Finally, the day came. The national competition was in a big city. Maya had never been anywhere so grand. The room was huge, with bright lights and hundreds of people. Maya set up her project and waited for her turn. Her heart raced, but she reminded herself of her mother's words. "You've worked hard. Believe in yourself." When it was her turn to present, Maya stood in front of the judges and a large audience. Her voice trembled at first, but then she looked at her water filter. It reminded her of all the struggles she had faced and overcome. "This project is more than just a water filter," she said, her voice steady now. "It's about hope. I come from a place where clean water isn't always easy to get. I wanted to help my community with something simple and affordable." She paused, then added, "I've faced a lot of challenges. People have laughed at me because of where I'm from. Some didn't believe in me because of the color of my skin or the little I had. But I didn't let that stop me. My mother always told me, 'What people say about you doesn't define who you are.'" And she was right. The room was silent, every eye on Maya. She poured muddy water into her filter, and when clean water dripped out, the audience broke into applause. Tears filled Maya's eyes as she finished. "This is my dream, to make a difference. And if I can do it, so can you." When the winner was announced, Maya's name echoed through the hall. She couldn't believe it. The crowd stood up, clapping and cheering for her. As Maya walked to the stage to accept her award, she thought about her journey, the nights spent working on her project, the laughter and doubt from others, and her mother's endless support. "This is for everyone who has ever felt small or not good enough," she said into the microphone. "You can do big things. You just have to believe. Maya's story spread across the country. She became a symbol of hope and determination, showing everyone that no matter where you come from, you can achieve great things. Maya stood on the grand stage, holding the national trophy in her hands. The lights were bright, and the applause was loud, but all she could think about was her mother's face. She wished Isabel could see this moment, but Maya knew her mother was back home, watching the live broadcast on the neighbor's tiny TV. As the crowd cheered, Maya took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. Her voice was steady, her heart full. "This trophy is not just for me," she began, her eyes scanning the crowd. "It's for the kids who are told they can't. It's for the families who struggle but never stop dreaming. It's for my community, for my mother who never let me give up." The audience quieted, hanging on her every word. "People might tell you that you're too small, too poor, too different to make a difference," Maya continued. "But they're wrong. You are not defined by where you come from. You are defined by how hard you try, how much you care, and how much you believe in yourself." Tears streamed down her face as she held the trophy higher. "This isn't the end of my journey. It's just the beginning. I'm going to keep learning, keep building, and keep helping people. And I hope all of you do the same." The crowd rose to their feet, clapping and cheering louder than ever. Maya stepped off the stage, her heart bursting with pride. She wasn't just a girl from a poor neighborhood anymore. She was a symbol of hope, a reminder that big dreams could grow even from the smallest places. When she returned home, the people of whole area gathered to celebrate. They cheered her name and shared stories of how Maya had inspired them. Kids looked at her with wide eyes, believing for the first time that they could be like her. Maya hugged her mother tightly that night, whispering, "We did it, Mama." "No, you did it," Isabel said, smiling through her tears. "You proved to the world what I already knew. You're unstoppable." Years later, Maya became an inventor whose work changed lives around the world. But no matter how far she went, she never forgot the little girl with a dream, sitting under a tree with scraps in her hands. Maya's story became a light that guided others, proving that even when the odds are against you, courage and determination can build a future brighter than you ever imagined.